So yeah, I'm Sara. I'm with My Code Media, and I thought we could just maybe start by telling you a little bit about the conversation that Sachin and I had last night. It was a pleasure to speak with you and to prepare for this. We have a lot in common. What does the US's largest multicultural media platform and a global leader in cybersecurity have in common? It turns out we have a lot in common. So it's a really great conversation that we're excited to share with you all. So yeah, Sachin, you want to start by just telling us a little bit about yourself? We can kind of go from there.
Yeah, let's do it. And thanks for laying that out. I mean, we had a really good conversation last night. I kept thinking even afterwards, the thoughts that sparked, but this is Sachin.
Kept going. We could have stayed up, but we could have had an all-nighter.
We totally could have kept going yesterday, but I'm glad we can continue now and then afterwards too. This is Sachin. I lead marketing for McAfee for anything direct to consumer acquisition based in the Bay Area. The way we are structured is we are structured around end-to-end experience management that are tied within my team. So from first customer touch point to the end, and the engagement from there onwards are part of my team. I've been in marketing for close to 20 years. I'm doing sales and marketing. I spent about a decade in B2B. And then last decade or so, I've been largely focusing on consumer marketing. So I'm excited to be here, happy to dive both sides. But Sara, we'll follow your lead and have a conversation.
Yeah, so we both started our careers on the traditional side and have been along for the ride as the digital transformation has happened. And I think one of the things that we both agreed on and found out about each other early on is that sort of respecting and having a high value for diversity within teams is a key part of leadership and the success that both of our organizations have had. But before we dig into that a little bit deeper, I just want to tell you guys a little bit about My Code and the work that we do. So we started out as H Code in 2015 and very quickly grew to become the largest US reach for US Hispanics. And we did that by partnering with leading global publishers, in Latinx and European communities. And have deep integrations to reach US Hispanics in the US. And so that model really grew and proliferated into what we now have as B Code and A Code and Pride Code and W Code. So we rebranded earlier this year as My Code and run a portfolio business that supports minority and multicultural publishers, creators, social media influencers, et cetera. I love the work that we do. I've been here about 2 years, but I have a pretty diverse background myself, starting, as I said, in traditional media and coming along to the digital side in ad tech. It's been a fun ride, and I love speaking with leaders like Sachin, who I think are really pioneering some of the principles that a lot of brands and a lot of organizations that touch brands in that connection point from the very beginning of the marketing funnel all the way down to the consumer experience. I loved some of the work that you were sharing with me that you're doing, and I'd love for you to talk a little bit more about that for everyone that's here.
Absolutely. And I work for McAfee, as I said. McAfee is an iconic brand. I believe most of the audience will be familiar, but if you're not, we provide industry-leading cybersecurity solutions that protect people online. And we have made a conscious decision about 2.5 to 3 years that as the world of cybersecurity is evolving, it is evolving from device-centric to people-centric, because people care more about the privacy and identity of themselves, their kids, their family, the community, versus just protecting the device, which continues to be an important area, but it is evolving over the period of time. So how I explain cybersecurity to my 8-year-old when she says, "Daddy, what do you do at work?" And my answer to that is fairly simple. I keep her and friends and family protected online. That makes her explore all the YouTube videos and other videos and the content that she's been exposed to, that she should be exposed to at the age appropriate level. You touched on some of the aspects, Sara. I'll unpack that a little bit more, but I love the work that you guys are doing. I spent so much time on the blogs that you guys have written. Highly recommend others to read it as well, just as a marketing leader, as a business leader, as well as a consumer. I think some really amazing work. So kudos to My Code team and how we have evolved the codes there.
Thank you.
In terms of my approach to diversity, I've worked globally, and to some extent, having worked in Europe, Asia Pacific, and in the US, and having teams that span across every continent. My teams span like more than 15 countries globally. And it's something that
And
I
I
have.
love how even in the US, your experience is diverse. Like you spent some time in the Midwest, on the East Coast and the West Coast. Like what you guys were really talking to a global leader here, which is very exciting. And I love
Yes, been a globetrotter. I don't know how my wife feels about it. I think she likes it. She knows me that way. Having lived in Asia a few places, I lived in Germany a little bit, and even in the US, I've been in Michigan, New York, Austin, Portland. Now I'm in the Bay Area for the last 10 years, but kept traveling. So I love traveling and meeting different people. I think it did shape my thinking of and seeing the talent and the expertise and the skill set that people are bringing from different experiences. This also goes back to my first boss 20 years ago, who told me different people are different in different ways, and you have to learn to appreciate the differences the way they are presented to you. And we truly try to bring that to life at McAfee or anywhere that I've led, is bringing people from different parts and walks of life with different expertise. We have performance marketers in our team. We have visual designers sitting in Spain. We have copywriters at different parts of the world. And we also have really deep insights folks who are coming from a completely different background altogether. And what we have found is when you bring people from diverse set and build a culture of collaboration and dialogue, the dialogue leads to hypotheses, insights that leads to a variety of different testing that you do. We do more than 400 tests a quarter, and that dives a little bit more deeper, richer experiences that you can show to the customer. End of the day, we are in the customer business. We are in the people business, and we represent the people we are reaching out to. And the more diversity of thoughts and ideas you bring in, it is good for business. It's good for consumer, and it makes it fun to work with.
Absolutely. And I think one of the things that I really latched onto when we were talking that I'm going to commit to memory are your 5 C's, because I imagine that there are a set of unique challenges when, opening up the freedom and flexibility to really allow people to bring their full selves to work and sort of bypass where they are geographically or what time zone they're in, and making that work within a large organization, I think is really unique. And I thought that what you shared about those principles was really insightful. So I'd love for you to talk a little bit more about that.
Absolutely. And take those as 5 C's. How can you talk to a marketer and not have 5 C's, 5 P's,
not
or
have an acronym,
5 or 4s of those acronyms that we kind of throw in? But another 5 C's that I believe from leadership standpoint, that has worked well for me. And I follow them diligently wherever I work. So as a leader, the first and foremost important piece of the C's is clarity. The clarity of purpose, strategy, and vision. So you should build with your team collaboratively where we are going, what's the purpose. Like, for example, we exist at McAfee to protect people online. There is a clarity of what we want to accomplish in terms of KPIs, business, and the longer term goal across consumer metrics, business metric, as well as other experience metric that we track on. So that's one. Once you define that, nobody's second guessing, and you're aligning your organization to this clarity. The second C, which I very fundamentally believe in, as a leader, our jobs is to create more leaders and build teams. So that's my second C. How do you cultivate the experience and create more leaders who can go and multiply that effect? The third C comes down to the culture. This is where you bring differentiation. You start bringing differentiation with your competitors. The culture of collaboration and growth mindset is something that I have pivoted to my entire life. I grew up and I always had a growth mindset of doing today better than yesterday. Today, we call it as A/B testing or experimentation. And we have KPIs and fancy frameworks to track it. But it's just having that culture of growth mindset as a collaborative mind is my third C. Huge differentiator for us. If anybody comes to me, what is our differentiator? That is our culture. And I can give you some examples that we were talking last night. The third is fourth is communicate. Talk to your team. Talk early, regularly, often, one-to-one with with different settings. You regular have one-on-one with your team, all hands, provide that visibility of communication. Today's generation is all about communication and connection. If you don't have that, then then it is a single-sided dialogue versus a monologue versus it's a dialogue and bidirectional conversation. And the last C is compassion. End of the day, we are in the people's business. Humans have, especially in the last 2.5 to 3 years, what we have all experienced as humanity, our work and personal has kind of become a very much of a continuum, and having that compassion of where somebody is coming in, what their aspirations are, what their family situation is, what their personal situation is, and having a compassion. Empathy is good. Empathy drives, I understand what you're saying. Compassion is leaning in. How can I help?
Love that. Everybody write that down. These are the 5 C's: clarity, creation of leaders, culture, communication, and compassion. Yes, and I think McAfee made a good bet on the internet, growing the way that it has.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Tell us a little bit about, because you said culture is the #1 important thing. Tell us a little bit about how that comes into play from a leadership perspective in building a team all the way through retaining a team and really leading them to success.
Yeah, happy to unpack. It really comes down to 2 key principles. One team, one dream, and you will see that across the board. And second, celebrate. I used to say celebrate small wins, but now I've come to a point of celebrate all wins. So let me unpack that. So as we engage at the hiring stage itself, we look for leaders who are passionate about team broader than what their role is. It's never about the role, but about the team and the broader purpose that we are going after. Second, they are looking for nurturing teams and creating leaders. And they've had an experience or leaning in towards building that. So right at the onset, you have set Slack channels where people come in and we welcome them. Everybody welcomes them. They make an introduction. They engage on those Slack channels. We celebrate the birthdays and we celebrate all the wins that we have. Few other examples are what we do, which is unique, and I would recommend if other leaders to follow in, is growth awards. So essentially think of these as a quarterly leadership awards. Typically you have, hey, these people are really amazing, they're great collaborators, great contributors, going extra miles. Instead of those being driven and decision by leaders, which is a CMO or a VP, it is more organically driven by the team members itself. So every quarter.
I love this so much because there's themes, right? You were explaining that like they're fun themes and you let, the teams kind of drive what that is and it gets everybody excited.
Yes, it does. And then I get to, like, for example, our last theme was Oscars. So best actors, best actresses, and best visual designer and best debutant. So we are also celebrating the new members. And I get 1 vote, just like everybody else. I don't even know who the winners are, and it's disclosed at the end of the voting. So it's team chosen, which drives truly the culture of one team, one dream, of how they want to shape the culture of the organization.
So fun. Yeah, we like to do things where we recognize our peers at MyCode as well. One of the things that I was sharing with Sachin that I think has been a key differentiator for us too is that, we've had the organic privilege of building a team from the ground up that is very diverse. I think we have, over 13 countries of origin represented, and the work is just better. I think having and pulling up a seat at the table for, future leaders is really important and something that we both have, decided is a secret to success in business and in marketing. Okay, so let's go on to the next question, which is, tell us a little bit about how your personal and professional experiences have influenced your leadership style.
We touched upon that in the beginning itself. I've been traveling around the globe, have worked with different teams. So for me, diversity is kind of embedded into the way I just approach. And to me, diversity is the diversity of thoughts, experience, backgrounds, ideas, and hypotheses. I've built some of the most diverse and inclusive teams wherever I've worked. I think it's subconscious. I just gravitate towards more hey, what somebody is bringing in onto the table, what their background is, and that's always been the decision criteria, and how they fit in and enhance the culture versus a mold that they have to fit into a particular.
When somebody's new to your team and they're just sort of getting their feet wet and level setting, getting used to a new job, what are some of the things that you do as a leader to help support that and make yourself?
So accountability, see, there are two things that go together: accountability and decision making. So I truly believe my leaders have the complete power and authority to make decisions, but they're also accountable for the outcome. And I'm available as a resource to collaborate with them and provide ideas or open any doors if they get stuck to. So what I do is, and I do this as a principle, whoever joins as my direct leadership team I spend first week, every single day, 30 minutes, just to bring them up to speed, what the organization, who the players are, what's the strategy. Remember, my first seek clarity and aligning on that purpose every single day. Second week, I go alternate days. And we spend more in terms of how do we go deeper into the business, the teams, what are the KPIs, their idea, how are we going to run? And when we get to the third week, it is driven by the leader who has joined my team, how much she or he wants to engage and and at what frequency. At the very least, there's going to be obviously a leadership meeting, and then one-on-one with that leader. But I'm open. So for over the 3 weeks window, we're meeting every day to alternate week, then the leader driven, I think really helps people get started fairly quick.
I think this is so great. It's huge because, as an organization grows and really starts to accelerate, having that clarity of purpose and having, a very senior leader such as yourself put in that time, it just makes so much sense. And I think, everyone should be doing that if they're not already.
I would highly encourage
there to do the same and to sort of model that in the way that the entire teams get executing their whatever they're doing day to day, which kind of brings me to the cross-functional piece of the conversation that we talked about. Yep. Speak a little bit about how within a very large organization, how that works.
It's hard. I think most of the audience will relate to it. Working cross-functional is challenging, but it is also very enriching. So it's very similar. So my definition, at least principally, runs beyond just my team. So all the partners, cross-functional partners that we work with, the concept of one team, one dream works very well with them too. So it starts with what is it that we are solving together? Everyone has a role to play. For example, we work with a really amazing e-commerce leader who builds really amazing products that we use to go to market and build experiences that we want to build in. So early on, beginning of the year, we do the planning together. When we do the planning together, it really percolates down to, okay, what are the OKRs? We aligned on the OKRs early on and the associated timelines and collaboration model. And then time to time, as new member come in, we celebrate them coming in, their victories, joint victories, CEO awards, we share the nominations together. Also, every organization has certain level of bravos or kudos that you give internally. I always keep about 25% of the capacity in my bravos or kudos to cross-functional team members as a principle. 25% of the kudos and bravos will go to cross-functional leaders. And that forces the thinking that it is a one bigger team versus just one unit. So that's one. Second, your regular one-on-ones, joint meetings, joint brainstorming ideas, focus on the bigger pictures, try to predict the conflicts early on. Harder, easier said than done. We can come on the panel and we can have a chat about it, and I can start. We can predict. But in the cases where it arises and it catches you by surprise, keeping the emotions aside and having a very factual, data-driven conversation, and then you bring in the compassion of
absolutely
who that person is, what's the background, what they might be dealing with, and then kind of go from there. But it starts with, again, aligning on the OKRs. I've seen success of that in my previous organization as well, when I was at StubHub, our CEO did a phenomenal job of establishing OKRs top down. Absolutely stunning job. And I think it's a model that I've adopted at McAfee too, to aligning on those OKRs. I think it works.
Well, and some of the stories that you shared, which I just resonated with so much, was, really enabling your team to, through that principle of accountability, but then when needed, stepping in to take the fall if you have to, right? But never throw them under the bus, which is so key, and just a really good example of, I think, positive leadership out of gratitude and compassion. So I love that about you.
I think what we talked yesterday was more just for the broader, is like, when this is, again, I get into some of these cheesy places, but I feel that they make you remember is when your fear of failure is more than fear of missing out, you will never take risk.
That's right.
So you should always have I don't want to miss out. You want to keep ideating, keep innovating, but there is always someone who's got your back. If it is thoughtfully enough, and then you learn from whatever your experience is, I think your team innovates. And in our business, innovation is the only currency, in my opinion, and it manifests itself in tests.
This has been my experience at MyCode too. As a startup that's fast growing, I mean, we have to be in that mindset of, go for it. Take a shot, because you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. Look at all these cliches we're throwing out, but it's good because they're easy to remember, and they're really good principles. My kitty cat is just joining me here. Sorry, a little cameo. But we've talked a little bit about the we've talked a lot about so far, within the organization, but let's connect that to the consumer experience. So McAfee being an organization that has really, I think, done a great job of pivoting to be less technical and to be less assumptive on what the benefits or the USP for the brand is, to really putting everything at the in the circumference of the consumer in the middle. So talk to me a little bit about how you guys do that and how you keep that focus.
Yep. So 2.5 or 3 years ago, if you had come to McAfee's blog or our website, it was very much centered around technology and us. Like, you would find a big Milky Way that said what we stand for and what our motto is, and device to cloud security. If you have read our blogs, they would talk about a particular blog and how it affects your kernel and how deeply it goes, change your registry, and that could create vulnerability of your device, etc., which for consumer world is just blah. You don't understand. Like, what does it mean? So it is important. And there is a set of segment that is interested in that information. So we do create blogs on that. But from there, what really accelerated our thinking around that was just purely two principles when the pandemic hit and everybody started to work from home. Is one, we have fundamentally decided that we don't believe in fear-based marketing. So when the time everybody was scrambling to work from home, we decided to, hey, just be more positive outlook. And number two principle was just be out there and be helpful to the community. So we started investing and shifted towards more consumer-centric content. And our early phase of content were focused towards what resources are available to you to homeschool your kids, resources available to you to look for a job, dating. There are a lot of singles out there. How do they date online? Or a lot of people could not attend funerals or weddings. So how do you attend those remotely? How do you keep your conversation with your doctor private? So a lot of different models have evolved since then, which, if I look back at, we were very strategic about it, but we are truly driven by just two principles: be helpful and not scare people, not be fear-based. But since then, we have very strongly gravitated towards more consumer-centric content. The content we are building is easily consumable on mobile phone. Click of a button, you can share with your friends and family or whoever you want. That information will be helpful. It's like 5 ways you can stay protected. 5 ways kids are using TikTok. 3 things you want to know as a parent about TikTok or some of the social platform. So we have really shifted our focus towards more consumer-centric media, consumer-centric content that people can relate to. In addition, there was a need for the technical content. So we created an online academy that we call as Learn with McAfee, where you can have one-on-ones on cybersecurity. Okay, what is personal data cleanup? Yes, we can all go and clean our data online. if you want to, so that online brokers don't
A lot
sell
of
it.
people don't know that. A lot of people do not know that. And it's so
No.
important.
It is important. I think the problem we are trying to solve is when there is a tangible risk, we all react toward this. For example, we all have auto insurance, home insurance, flood, or earthquake, whatever that entails that we can tangibly see. And as a family, we discuss about the intangible risk that cybersecurity presents. It's real, it's intangible, you can't feel and see, and you don't actively talk about, is where the awareness and education starts to play in. But if we go super technical, you'll not get the receptivity, and we miss delivering the purpose that we have. So that's why we shifted more towards more consumer-centric model. That it is important for us as consumers to be aware of what the risks are, but B, more importantly, there is something we can do about it. And there are solutions that are available at your fingertips if you want to go after that. We generally choose not to put monetization when we are doing that, because the goal there is just to create education and awareness and a dialogue there.
Well, and I love that. And that's the right thing to do, right? If as in a large organization, you have the resources, I mean, that's making the change you want to see in the world, which just as a mom of 2 kids that are, tapping into the metaverse, and, they are light years ahead of where I was at their age. And it's really important work. So thank you for what you're doing and keeping that clear, that clarity front and center, because I think that it does impact all of our lives. And I love what you said about, really having the utility to help people, during a global pandemic, not miss out on those key moments, weddings, funerals, business meetings, school, all the things. I don't think any one of us, anybody in the audience either could have imagined the acceleration that would have happened in the online space, but here we are. And I think that there's still a lot to do in bringing entire communities along. And what you were talking about the 3 questions that are guideposts for your team, can you share a little bit more about that, and how you make sure that it comes back, use that as a tool to bring it back to that consumer-centric model?
Happy to. So let me give a little bit plug on the consumer side, as well as, since you touched on the parent, I'm a parent myself. And we just did release a 10-country study on connected families. And what we found was really profound, which so general summary is that kids are looking for parents for guidance to keep them protected. Our role in their eyes is a protector, even online. But we are coming short of delivering on that promise or the expectation. Like nearly half of the parents don't even have password in their own mobile phones. And that number drops to further 13 points when it goes to 10 to 15 points when it comes to children's phones. So we are less prone to put a password on our phone, but even lesser when it comes to our kids' phone. So imagine if you losing your phone on an Uber or a coffee shop, it's all exposed to everybody. So do have your password, have them password protected, double-factor authentication.
And you're cloud enabled. I've lost many phones, I can tell you.
Yes, so 2-factor enablement and of course cloud enablement, but do protect your kids' phone as well. Back to what we were discussing yesterday. I think having worked in sales and marketing for this long, one thing gets embedded is that you always start with your customer. And what experience you want to deliver to your customer, whether it is live meeting or it is online digital now. I started offline 20 years ago, and now it's all digital, if you will. Of course, we have traditional media too. So 3 questions that I always ask any experiences that we are building with my team. 1, what do we want the customer to feel? Now, this is almost the question is, it's a hot day outside, really summer, and it's walking into a cool air conditioning room and having a drink of your choice. This is just that one experience. What do you want them to feel as soon as they are exposed to the experience that you're building? Second question is more performance oriented. What do you want them to do? This is behavioral element. Do you want them to download your product, engage with your product, activate a particular service, learn a blog, or convert or buy? Whatever that is, be very clear what that behavior is and keep that. Like, what do you want them to do? And the third one is more longer term in my perspective is, what do you want them to believe? We are here to support you. You can do something about cybersecurity protection online. Oh, I trust this company. Whatever that belief that you want to drive as a brand has to come through in the experiences that you're building. So I'll repeat, what do you want them to feel? This is all about aesthetics and to some extent, as they see the first experience, what do you want them to do? This is all behavioral. And the third one is what do you want them to believe? And that's a long-term piece, which builds over multiple iterations and experiences that customers have with you.
Do you think that the first two, the feel and the do, are prerequisites for that believe moment? Or do you think that there is an opportunity to jump to believe in the middle?
I think that's a good question. From my experience, the first two are definitely prerequisite, but what I have often seen is that people stop at the first two. Yeah. Is, oh, this is amazing experience. Oh my God, just look at the download rates or just look at the conversion. It's phenomenal. But this is not a one-time engagement with your customers. The performance marketer in me, who has always worked as a business person, as lifetime value of a customer and the cost of acquisition, that balance, that if you only focus on the first C, which is the customer acquisition cost, the first two can probably deliver that in the short term. But on a longer term basis, to drive LTV, lifetime value, you have to go and solve for that belief. And as a leader, it's our job to ask that question. This is great, phenomenal conversion. What do you think people walked away believing?
And validate it, right? Like find out the why. This has been a huge part of, MyCode's success and growth. We have a piece of our business that is Intelligence Center. We have a very diverse team in and of ourselves, but we are asking the communities that we serve all the time, how are different things impacting them for brands, but also proactively. So we publish for the industry at large fact packs on an annual basis and are constantly rolling out studies. And that has really, I think, helped us, our partners, our brand partners, but also the consumers that we serve, because it brings their voice to the forefront. And that's really, one of the ways that we stay focused and, figure out, like, how do we have those like belief reinforcement moments, that you mentioned? Because I think sometimes as marketers, we can focus a little bit too much on the KPIs and lose acknowledgement of the fact that like things move so fast in the digital space that sometimes it's good to sort of like revisit or put the art and our brains behind the numbers and really ask why and dig into that sense of curiosity.
I agree. Just two quick points on that. One, I mean, having done subscription e-commerce, transactional e-commerce, like all sorts of marketplaces, subscription e-commerce forces you to think on LTV and why and the belief. But having said that, I think the broader plug for the community here, marketers, is as I started my marketing before cookies existed, then cookies existed, that changed the world, and you could target the customer across the board, wherever it is. Laws have come since then to protect consumer privacy and the right to use their information as they want them to be used. So we are moving to the world, if not already living, where cookies are going to be not as helpful as they were in the past. So context becomes way more important of engaging with the customer on a broader scale versus a more one-to-one targeted marketing, if you will, and which is where the why plays a huge role. So it's a hard one. It's a very hard thing to deliver. It's a hard thing to enable, but it's something that, what's fun if it is not hard? It's something that we should all aspire towards and work towards, more so because that is what, as a marketer, we'll be left with as the world of identity and cookies become less and less available to us in our disposal.
And identity protection, just as a consumer, is so important, but understanding, who your target audience is and how to effectively reach them and communicate them is so important as a marketer. So, those two things converging, is interesting. I think we've all been talking about the cookie apocalypse for a while now. But context is really important, but just kind of going back to leadership and building teams, I think, having team members that can help tease out that context and really, sort of decipher meaning from the data points that are going to be available, whether it's, contextual consumption or looking at different behavioral patterns, things that we know, and building CRM databases to have that direct, line of communication and being able to extrapolate that out to get new customers, sort of in the funnel, if you will, is really, interesting and a challenge that we're all going to have to be working together to solve.
I agree. I agree. It's a quick plug. Maybe it was people helpful. I wrote an article about 2 years ago about five important things for experimentation. It's available online. If community looks it up, it's at Ad Exchanger. I think you might find it helpful. And it touched upon some of the aspects, Sara, that you were talking. Those are so important.
I'd love to read it. Could you maybe, if
I'll
you
post the article.
put it
I'll
in
post the link here. Yeah.
Thank you. And one of the, I think we're coming up near time, if I'm not mistaken. I don't want to run too over, but I'd love to hear a little bit about what advice would you give to an aspiring leader?
Be curious and always start from the customer. These are the two things I follow religiously every single day. I'm a naturally curious guy, but I would advise that, and then always keep customer in mind and work backwards.
This is a similar question. Maybe you just answered it in that response, but what advice would you give to your younger self?
Those two, and be patient, because I learned from a recent leader is you want to go further. It's again cliche. You want to go further, be together. If you want to go faster, go alone. And I think in businesses you have to go farther, and you want to go farther at scale, and you go faster when you have everybody along with you. So I would give myself 20 years younger, be a little bit more patient, and go from there. But continue to be curious, continue to ask questions that customers would ask. Put yourself in customer shoe. You can never go wrong, because customers will not let you go wrong.
Absolutely. And I think go out there and be a customer, whatever that means for you, right? Like you've lived a lot of different places. I've lived a lot of different places. I think we both share a love of travel. And I think it's, it's putting yourself in consumer positions. One of the things that, I love to do if I'm trying to solve a problem for a client that I'm, working with, is I'll go, if it's a retail client, I'll go to the store. I want to experience exactly where they are. And what that means, because that, I think that experiential part of it, and really, like even what you talked about, you have to be local to go global. Those are, synergistic concepts. And being, kind of infusing that into your leadership style too, I think also reinforces being able to come back to the consumer. Do you want to talk a little bit about local for global? Because I thought that was really an interesting concept.
Yeah, thanks for bringing that. Happy to. So very simple. My philosophy is, if you want to be global, you have to go local. Otherwise, you'll always be an international company in a country. So go local to be global, else be an international company. So how it manifests is, like, as we build journeys and experiences in Germany, France, India, China, we build these local pods of teams that are cross-functional in nature, who understand and start from the local needs of the customer, the local nuances, the local calendar, local retail moments, local slangs that people use in a particular country. For example, in UK, people use, they don't call it a cart. So things of that nature that you have to start getting into to truly be a local company. Otherwise, it will always perceive as a North America centric view, or wherever you're based in, you're bringing that to the country.
Even with America, we find that in a lot of the work that we do, that authenticity is key. And, having those cultural nuances, we say all the time, even, within, let's take H code as an example, our first and founding code. The Hispanic community is not a monolith, and we cannot speak to the Hispanic community in that way and expect to break through. And so, yeah, like I couldn't agree with that more. And we find that, across all of the codes that we represent. It really, those cultural nuances, which a lot of times are local experiences, really matter. They do.
I think the word you used yesterday, Sara, was no broad strokes. You got to go a little bit more targeted there.
Yeah.
I agree. That's our sign. Carrie is here. So
I'm not the hook. I just wanted to say I tweeted out your article using the hashtag BILivecast. If anybody wants to read it, you'll be able to grab it there too.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And well, thank you both so much for joining. I appreciate it. I'll let you finish up, Sara. Sorry.
No, I was just going to say, I think we've covered everything we wanted to talk about. I don't know if anyone has any questions or anything, but Sachin, thank you. This has been a wonderful experience.
Likewise.